Pokemon has existed for many years now, and Sword and Shield is about to be released in a few months. Not only that, a few days after this video will be made, the very first Pokemon Direct since the first one, back in February, will reveal more information for Sword and Shield. So I'd like to take this time to discuss Pokemon mechanics that have existed almost exclusively since Generation 1, 20 years ago, that have, despite going through some changes and defining what Pokemon games are at their core, will never change in major ways in the future, probably. So, in other words, to simplify, this video is 10 Pokemon mechanics that will never change. Probably. I say probably because there are some exceptions where side games, as you will see in this list, will have tweaked and kind of broken the expected rules of not changing these mechanics. Now, as I will say in this list, there's no reason why they can't change these mechanics. If Game Freak and the Pokemon designers who create the video games, if they really wanted to, they can change every single thing on this list. But the point of this video is to say that these mechanics are so ingrained into Pokemon's core structure and define what Pokemon has become after so many generations and years, that changing them would be too drastic, and therefore the argument would be logical to say that they will never change these, probably. But again, I should admit that they have already tweaked some of these over the years, and but most of them are pretty stable, and they will probably never change. Then again, in a few days' time, we may find out something drastic about Sword and Shield, or maybe we won't find out until the game comes out, that maybe something on this list will be tweaked. And that'll be exciting, but not necessarily wanted. We'll see. So, without further ado, let's get started with the 10 Pokemon mechanics that will probably never change. Number 1. We have Pokemon teams ever since the beginning being a total of 6. Now, the anime has also referenced this ever since Ash decided to catch his 7th Pokemon and had to, go through the tutorial. Like, we all know that you can only have 6 Pokemon in your party at one time. And the reason this will never change is because it's been this way since the beginning, and it's perfectly balanced, It would be unfair to have access to 10 or 20 Pokemon in a battle, or to only have 1 or 2 or 3, because everyone has multiple favorites, unless you're doing a run with just one single Pokemon or something like that. So it only seems fair that you have access to 6 Pokemon at one time. If they were to change this, which they probably won't, they might change it to 7 in the future, but again, that's virtually impossible at this point. 6 Pokemon teams have become so stable as like it's part of the Pokemon formula. It's not going to change, which is why it's on this list. Number 2, each Pokemon can learn a total of 4 moves. Now, lots of people make jokes about 4-move syndrome, and I've encountered this many times myself when you're, designing a nice Pokemon set, and you just find out that it learns so many useful moves in its move pool, and from TMs and move tutors. Examples of this include Pokemon with like really good stats and really large move pools. Like, I know, for example, Yveltal, for example, learns way more moves than it can learn at one time. Dragon types like Dragonite as well. They're just a few of the many Pokemon that learn way more moves than the 4-move limit. So many people have even speculated in the past that, when Sun and Moon come out, they're gonna change it maybe to have 5 moves, in the menu. But since it's been 4 moves since the beginning, I again argue that they'll almost never, probably never change this. It's part of the formula. It's very stable, and people have gotten used to it. Sure, it gets a little annoying when it comes to certain Pokemon that learn a lot of moves, and you just love to have all those moves. You'd love to have all those, you know, the priority one, the spread one, the setup, every stab. But all that is wishful thinking. Pokemon have always known 4 moves at a time, and they probably always will. Number 3 is that each Pokemon has 2 types. It is very popular for people to speculate that what types a Pokemon should have if it had access to 3 types. And lots of Pokemon suffer from being considered to be the wrong type. Charizard, for example, since the very beginning, has been complained about for not being a Dragon type. And even when it got its Mega Evolutions in Gen 6, it still only was 2 types at one time, at a time. Of course, this does not account for in-battle situations where moves like Trick or Treat or Forced Curse allow a Pokemon to be 3 or even 4 types at a time. But that's only, again, in a battle, and it's not, like, permanent. So, since each Pokemon having 1 or 2 types at a time is part of the Pokemon formula, it's been there for years, since the very beginning, it makes little sense to change it now. The only reason that it's exciting to think about is because there's so many untapped potential and combinations that you could have for everything on this list so far. Like having 7 Pokemon on your team, having 5 moves per Pokemon, and having 3 types per Pokemon. All of these things I've mentioned so far are just, you know, the stuff of dreams that make Pokemon exciting in like some sort of fan-made base. But like, again, they're probably never going to change this in the actual Pokemon games. Number 4 on this list is the Eevee IV System. Again, just like how Let's Go technically changed the 6-team thing by letting you have access to your storage anywhere, not just in Pokemon centers, Let's Go games have also tweaked the Eevee IV system where they use AVs, which is a simplified version of EVs and IVs, because Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee were specifically made for fans that were not familiar with Pokemon up to that point, you know, coming in from the Pokemon Go, you know, fan base, and other people from outside the veterans who have been playing Pokemon for years. So AVs in Let's Go were a simplified version of EVs and IVs. Putting that aside, though, the EV and IV system, while it hasn't always been the same, obviously what it was in Gen 1 and what it is now in Gen 7 are not the same, but what it has become, though, is so reliable and stable to Pokemon veterans everywhere that they probably won't change it. I mean, sure, they might tweak it in the future, but really, effort values, which you can choose yourself and even start from scratch if you want to, and also IVs, which even some veterans have trouble figuring out when it comes to breeding the right Pokemon. You know, it takes a lot of effort to make the perfect Pokemon with breeding, and if you want it shiny, if you're even more into that, or if you want the right nature and the right egg moves and all those things, and then you have to EV train it. All those things is more recently, especially since Generation 6, when they made it more easy to access what EVs the Pokemon has, what effort values you can give it. Personally, I didn't know anything about this kind of EV training until Gen 6 made it way easier. X and Y introduced super training. Ever since then, it's become ingrained into like the professional Pokemon and VGC Pokemon scene. Obviously, casual gaming, it doesn't have to involve EVs and IVs at all. If you're going to do a casual playthrough, you don't really have to care about this unless you really want to, and that's the beauty of it. You know, you don't really lose too much if you play casually. It may make the game a little bit harder, but it also makes it a little bit more enjoyable if you're a casual fan. So, you know, unless they're making more side games like Let's Go, which technically are semi-main series games, but not completely in my eyes. They're more like semi-side games. It doesn't really matter. They're not going to change the EV-IV system drastically, maybe a little bit, but not drastically in the future, and most likely not in Sword and Shield. So that's why it's on this list as something that will probably never change. Number 5 is the Pokeball Capture system, where you have to battle Pokemon to capture them. Again, this is another Let's Go exception, because Let's Go, just like in Pokemon Go, has you capture Pokemon simply by throwing a Pokeball and only relying on your skill with curves if you're using your Nintendo Switch. Again, the main series games, including Sword and Shield, as was confirmed ever since February, will not be doing the Let's Go route. It will be doing the classic route, where you have to battle and weaken Pokemon, and possibly use a status condition, and possibly strategize which Pokeballs are best for this situation in order to capture Pokemon. This is what most Pokemon fans like. This is what I like, and the fact that they're keeping it in Sword and Shield shows that it is something classic that will almost probably never ever change. They're free to do other side games. They're free to, you know, make mobile games and Let's Go and Pokemon Go however they want, but the main series games has no reason to change this. Some people actually want the main series games in Sword and Shield to be permanently capture Pokemon like in Let's Go, but I think that's a bit drastic. And the point of this video is to say that the things on this list shouldn't change because those changes would be too drastic. It would not be fair to the fan base that likes it the old way. And if you want to also be fair to the people who like it the new way, that's what the side games are for. That's what Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee are for. So I think it's only fair that Sword and Shield and all future main series Pokemon games don't change this. Number 6 on this list is the 1 status limit. This is a small mechanic, but I never said that everything on this list will be a major mechanic. I just said that they're going to be classic mechanics, and the 1 status limit is something that has pretty much been inside the game since Generation 1. Specifically, I'm referring to that major status conditions, the non-volatile ones. Frozen, burn, sleep, paralysis, poison. You can only have one of those at a time, and once you are inflicted by one of those, you are technically immune to all of the others. So some people have even used this as an advantage. Even as far back as Generation 1, some Pokemon trainers would intentionally poison their Pokemon so that they would be immune to the broken sleep status condition that was broken in Generation 1. Of course, people don't have to do that these days, but, you know, even in certain situations on Pokemon Showdown and in other battle facilities, you know, sometimes you don't like getting a serious status condition, but in certain cases, you're actually grateful to be burned instead of asleep, or to be poisoned instead of burned, because each one has its unique advantages and disadvantages. A burn lowers your attack, serious poison builds up over time, and sometimes you prefer the damage over the attack drop, and sometimes you prefer the attack drop over the, you know, the HP loss. And sometimes you prefer anything as long as it's not being frozen or asleep. And sometimes you want anything except having the speed drop from paralysis. So I agree that the 1 status limit is a good mechanic and that it should never change. It would be completely broken for a Pokemon to have more than 1 status condition at a time. Imagine having 2 or 3. It wouldn't be fair. It would be completely ridiculous for them to change this classic rule. I don't think there's anyone out there who wants Pokemon to be able to have more than 1 status condition at a time. It would be unfair. You know, maybe they'll make an ability in the future which allows you to inflict a 2nd status condition on your opponent, but that ability would have to be on some sort of exclusive Pokemon or something, just to be fair. Maybe a mythical Pokemon or something if they want, but other than that, it'd be too drastic. Number 7 on this list is the level 100 limit. I don't know why I included this on this list, but it was just interesting to think about. Ever since the beginning, for over 20 years now, Pokemon level up, which is normal. You know, the level system is unchanged, virtually unchanged. You know, you level up, sometimes you evolve, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you learn a new move, usually you don't. But the furthest you can get is level 100. Once you reach level 100, if you're unevolved, you can never evolve by level up, only by other methods if, you know, if you're that kind of Pokemon. But let's say you're Frogadier and you reach level 100. Well then, since leveling up is how you evolve into Greninja, well then you're never evolving. That's something, you know, some people have thought about. It's like, it's strange. Like, wait, what if I accidentally reach level 100 and I want to evolve by level up? Well, then you won't be able to. So that could be tweaked in the future. But more than that, I was wondering, well, is there any reason for them to increase the level 100 limit? Maybe have it so that certain Pokemon, if you meet certain conditions in the games, you get access to another 10 levels or something like that. Or maybe weaker Pokemon get extra levels to give them more of an advantage to be equal with the stronger Pokemon, which can only go to level 100. I don't know where I'm theorizing with this, it's just something to think about. But again, I put it on this list because even if it will never change, it's also a fact that maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's fine just the way it is. Number 8 on this list is the starter system. And by the starter system, I mean the fact that the main series games has had the same recipe in virtually every game, where you get a choice of 1 out of 3 Pokemon. One is a fire type, one is a water type, one is a grass type, and you can only choose one. Possible changes to the starter system is that you get 2 or all 3 starters. If, let's say, you know, you're playing in some sort of super easy, fun, casual mode, if they were to, like, I don't know, maybe reintroduce a difficulty system where a super fun, casual Pokemon player, maybe sacrificing something else in the future, gets to have 2 or 3 starters instead of just 1. I don't know why they would do this, but to me, that'd be fun because while in some regions I'm perfectly fine choosing just one of the Pokemon starters, there are other regions where I like all 3, and I think it's unfair that I have to choose between, let's say, Totodile and Cyndaquil. I love Totodile and Cyndaquil so much that it almost, like, hurts me to have to choose one over the other, and I have to think of all the advantages and disadvantages that one has over the other when I like them both, and it just seems unfair. So, again, it's on this list because they'll never change it, but if they were to change it, it'd be so cool to be able to choose more than one starter. Again, Let's Go is an exception because it's technically a main series game, but technically not really, because instead of choosing 1 out of 3, you're forced to choose Pikachu or Eevee depending on your game, and that's all fine and good. And then, of course, there's Pokemon Yellow. I forgot to mention that, but Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee are based on Pokemon Yellow. But what do you guys think? I feel like it would be a popular idea to be able to get more than one starter at the beginning of the game. Of course, I can't forget the games where you get other starters later on, like in the end game of Heart Gold Soul Silver, you get access to other starters. In the end game of Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, you get access to other starters. And in the early game of X and Y, you get access to the Kanto starters. And while many people find that made the game too easy, I found it a fun thing about X and Y. X and Y was a great game, and the whole reason that the Kanto starters were available early on in the game is why I made Charizard my mascot. Mega Charizard X was like a really great Pokemon in X and Y, so maybe if they offered more starters in the future, where like maybe Sword and Shield offers the Galar starters at the beginning, then when you get halfway through the game you get access to all the other starters, but make it difficult. Don't just give them away. Make it, like, include a challenge is what I would say. Include a challenge where you have to, like, complete something extremely difficult. Make it, like, extremely challenging, and in order to reward all your hard work, you get access to a choice of a foreign starter from another region. That's a great idea, in my opinion. Moving along, number 9 on this list is the evolution only after battle rule. And I should probably clarify what I mean by that. I mean that ever since the beginning of the games, ever since Generation 1, if your Pokemon reaches the requirement, the level up requirement where it can evolve, it evolves as soon as the battle ends, no matter where you are. But it never evolves in the middle of battle. It only evolves outside of battle, because that's just how the mechanics are made, that's how the game was coded ever since forever. But watching the anime over the years, and I've watched a lot of anime over the years, especially Pokemon, you notice the really cool scenes where, you know, the characters, usually Ash of course, but not always, battle someone and they evolve mid-battle. And if that was in the video game, it would make an extremely epic cutscene where you time your leveling up just right so that they level up and evolve exactly when you're fighting a gym leader or some boss or something. And the game is coded to provide cutscenes for that, epic cutscenes like in the anime. Because the anime always had these cool evolutions where, like, the Pokemon is trying to help their trainer and they're desperate because, like, you know, the anime always does this, you know, like, Serena's Eevee evolved into Sylveon in a battle, Froakie evolved into Frogadier in a battle, Frogadier evolved into Greninja in a battle, both of Ash's Talonflame's evolutions was in a battle. Of course, not all evolutions are in a battle, of course, but the ones that are make the anime more exciting for the younger viewers, especially, and it was exciting for me too. You know, it gives a bit of flair. So if they were to change the game so that you could evolve mid-battle, I would welcome it. It sounds like a cool idea. Maybe, I mean, some people complain that there's too many cutscenes in Generation 7 games, but I'm not talking about a story cutscene, just a mid-battle evolution cutscene. Sort of like the Mega Evolution cutscene and the Z-Move cutscene that they've done so far. Would that be so bad? I don't think so. And finally, number 10 on this list, which is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, is actually something that I want to change. Even though I put it on the list of mechanics that will probably never change, because I actually think they might never change it. I think they should change this, and let me just say what it is. The mechanic is abilities, and the thing about them that won't change probably is that trainer activated abilities don't exist. Now, I'm going to be starting a new series on my channel that'll be dealing with every single ability. Each ability will get a video going into detail about them. It'll be very encyclopedic for those of you who are into that kind of stuff. Putting that aside, I noticed that when it comes to the activation of abilities, they're activated by different things. You know, some abilities are activated by switching in, some are activated by switching out, some are activated at the end of the turn, some are activated by being attacked, some are activated by knocking out an opponent, some are activated by the weather, some are activated by other conditions, etc, etc. Some are passive, some are active. I'll go more into that in a separate video. But what I really was surprised that no ability in Pokemon exists that can be manually and intentionally, like by the push of a button, be activated by you, the player, the trainer. Because this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Where, oh, I activate my monster's ability. No, it's not Yu-Gi-Oh! It's Pokemon. You cannot control the ability. You can set up the conditions if it's a conditional ability. Like, for example, if you have Swift Swim, you can choose to use Rain Dance to activate Swift Swim. But then again, it's not like you manually made Swift Swim activate. You indirectly affected it, and not all abilities can be affected like that. Sometimes you have to try to knock out an opponent to activate Battle Bond on Greninja, but sometimes you fail, and you know they have to make it difficult because Battle Bond is a very powerful ability. And there's other abilities which, you know, don't get activated at all. They're active as long as the Pokemon is on the field, and then again there's the really bad abilities that don't have effects at all. My point is, I want abilities that can be activated by you, and the way I would do it was similar to how each move got a Z move, and certain Pokemon got a Mega Evolution. I think every ability should get a Super ability, and I'll go more into this in a separate video in the future. If every ability got a Super ability, which you can only activate once per battle because they'd be powerful, you choose when to activate the ability, and if the situation, you know, maybe choose a target if it's that kind of thing. For example, regular Intimidate activates automatically as soon as you send your Pokemon into battle, but without switching out your Pokemon, it'll never activate again. But a Super Intimidate could be activated when you wish to lower your opponent's attack, and it would be separate to the regular Intimidate, and also activate in the same turn as a possible attack. So you could attack and activate your super ability in the same turn. It'd be just like, you know, choosing a Z move or a Mega Evolution. That's the way I would do it. But again, this is not a real mechanic. This is just a theory and speculation about, like, just, you know, I'm experimenting with the idea, and that's just the way I would do it. If you're a fan of this idea of trainer-activated, player-activated super abilities that, you know, is up to you when to activate once per battle, and they'd be powerful, you know, for most of them at least. If you're into that kind of idea, stay tuned for a video in the future where I'd go more into that, and as well as my amazing ability series, which I'm currently working on, although it'll probably take months to finish because there are literally over 200 abilities at the moment, not to mention those that'll be introduced in Sword and Shield this year. But that aside, I went over the 10 Pokemon mechanics that will probably never change, and I hope you enjoyed this very long discussion about them. And thank you for listening to this discussion. Please check out my channel for more videos like this. Don't forget to share with a friend, and like and subscribe to help me out and inspire me to make more videos like this in the future. And I hope you see you all next time. Bye.